We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. Good news. Ed is back. He had some other things to do last week, and we didn't hear from him. I know a lot of people have been asking, so welcome back, Ed.
I'm glad to be here. This is one of those scheduling things that come up when you're a busy, really retired guy. I
Busy
don't know.
retired guy, yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I don't know how I ever squeezed in work, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now that I'm retired, I keep plenty busy. I don't know how I would have done it otherwise. Well, Ed, we haven't talked for a couple of weeks, and a lot of shit goes on in a
Yep, it
day.
does. Yeah,
Little alone a couple of weeks. What's the thing that's got you fired up the most?
the most. Wow. Well, believe it or not, it's the penny thing. Okay. Um,
Really?
just because there's a local outfit in Greenville, which is near where I live. They've been for years and years. They have been the one who produces the blanks for the pennies. So we're not going to have pennies. There goes a bunch of jobs. They're diversified, so they do other things, currencies for other countries and automotive parts and other things. But the pennies is their big account. So that goes away. All those guys who work there, who I'm sure voted for Trump, are going to fuck around and find out, as they say.
It struck me as strange. They say the reason why they want to get rid of the penny, and honestly, I don't care either way,
I don't
because it
either.
costs because it costs 3 cents to make one penny.
Yeah.
Okay, in a real transaction that makes sense, but these pennies get used over and over and over and over and over for years, so that doesn't seem like that bad of ratio. If it's
So
something that's, I mean, if I use it once and I paid $3 for it and only get a penny for it, okay. But a lot of people will get a lot of money over a lot of period of time. I don't see how the expense is a big deal.
let me ask you, what kind of razor do you use? Electric or the old style blade?
The old style blade.
Okay, so what do you pay for those? 8, $10 a deal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You use them once or twice, you toss them. You probably paid $2 for it, and you get to use it 3 or 4 times, depending on your beard and so forth. And but the penny, as you say, keeps right on giving.
I mean, whether they get rid of the penny or not, I don't know, but I think that will cause some difficulties. It'll cause everybody to have to change pricing because if you when you charge tax and if you're due a return of 26 cents, the fuck do you do?
Well, the adage department of the federal government is up in arms. They're saying, what do we do now? A penny saved is a penny earned. What do we do if nobody
There you
knows what a
go.
penny is?
Uh,
They've just made that obsolete. And these things aren't that easy to come up with.
no, well, that's the weird thing with all the things going on, all the concerns. Donald Trump
Exactly.
comes out with this sort of thing, and this is what Donald Trump does. He's always trying to distract attention or to impress somebody with his incredible abilities. And it's all a distraction from all the other absolutely ridiculous, frightening shit that's going on.
Absolutely. And it's like, that Netanyahu was standing next to Trump when he popped out with that Gaza thing and never heard anything about that before. And
No,
suddenly he's,
no.
you're looking at his eyes going, what the fuck is he talking about? I mean, this is insanity. Number one, the moment that we put soldiers in Gaza, the jihad, worldwide jihad, is just going to clamp down.
Right.
Every airplane, everything that they can possibly hit, they will do. It's going to destroy the kind of, I won't say friendly relations we have with Jordan and Egypt, although they are somewhat. Those would be destroyed immediately. And nobody in the Middle East except Israel, and not even I would think Israel would be all that happy about it.
No, I get the impression I'm not an expert on the Middle East or Israel or Gaza or anything like that. I'm sure the Israelis are cool with getting the Palestinians out of Gaza. They probably would want to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
But don't they uh, a value to that stretch of land, that strip of land? I mean, they look at it as almost as a holy or biblical type land too. So they're not just going to give it away to some fucking reality TV star, especially
Yeah,
America. That's the last thing they
absolutely.
want to do.
Absolutely. And there are even some schools of thought that the whole attack by Hamas was allowed to happen, maybe even encouraged to happen, so they could have the response that they've had to destroy essentially all the infrastructure of Gaza and really have no intention of ever giving it back themselves. And one of the theories is they want to build a canal that connects the Red Sea and the Mediterranean, a bigger one than exists now that's not dependent on Egypt, and that's the natural place for it is through the Gaza Strip. So that rings very true to me. So the idea that the attack was on Israel was encouraged. Certainly, I know they knew about it ahead of time, and they did nothing. We know that.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
seemed to me to be allow a provocation. Maybe it went further than they thought it would. I don't know. But remember who we're dealing with here. These people are ruthless. And I'm talking about Netanyahu in specific, not the Jewish people as
Right.
a whole. But the Netanyahu government, they're very ruthless, especially Netanyahu. And he's like Trump. I mean, he keeps things going so he doesn't go to prison, is what it comes down to.
Pretty much, and I take it even farther back, with a conspiracy theory as to why the war in Gaza started. It was kind of a surprise to everybody. It didn't make a lot of sense. And I go way back on this thing. Okay, now Hamas is basically influenced by Iran, correct?
Correct.
And Iran is influenced by Russia.
Yep.
And of course, Russia likes to meddle in. They've got a lot invested into Donald Trump winning. Um, it's my contention that Russia maybe encouraged this thing to create this mess for Biden to affect the election. Now,
Yeah.
the last thing I'll throw into this is if you remember in the first term of Donald Trump, like the first few days, do you remember? Um, do you remember the situation where he had two or three Russian spies in the Oval Office?
Took him in to his private office, talked to him. Nobody knows what was said. Yes, I remember that.
But what we do know is that he inadvertently slipped some military top secret information to him. Well,
Yeah,
he's new. You got to cut him a break. But you know what that top secret military information was for?
Israel.
Fucking Israel. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now people say, "Oh, that's kind of a long game. That doesn't make any sense." When it doesn't make any sense for Donald Trump, but it does for Putin.
absolutely. That's another guy who needs a bullet, and I can't believe nobody's done that yet. But still,
Yeah,
Putin.
it's surprising.
The yeah, I remember that. I thought so at the time when things started happening later. Giving Russia insight into the defenses for Israel meant that you also gave them to Iran, just as you say, and to Syria at that time too, no doubt, because they had big influence there.
Right.
Look where their dictator fled to when they chased him out, straight to
Right.
Russia. Right, it tells you all you need to know right there. The Yeah, he has been a sponge. I don't know if you saw it or not, but the former Prime Minister of Australia said that he had seen Trump and Putin together at some summit, and he said it was like you took fourth graders to the high school and they got to meet the best player on the basketball team, and that's the way
Right.
Trump was. He was absolutely giddy and absolutely just salivating over Putin the whole time. Creepy, he called it, as a matter of fact. And
Yeah.
that's what he aspires to. He aspires to the kind of power that Putin wields and Kim Jong Un.
Yeah. Yeah. He's definitely a fanboy of the strongmen, as it were. But he's hardly to be considered strong based on a lot of stuff we've seen. You mentioned something about when he was supposed to uh, uh, give the oath of office to Tulsi Gabbard. That kind of went
Yes.
awry.
Yeah, you could tell. I mean, people used to make fun of Biden, and some of that was certainly deserved. He was getting feeble looking, in the way he moved and so forth, and the
Mhm.
way he spoke. So the fact that he ran again, I will always say, was a huge mistake by him and the Democratic Party for allowing it to happen. He should have been talked out of it beforehand. and opened the convention. I would have been fine if Kamala had been the nominee, but in a legitimate way, as some folks didn't see it that way. I was fine with the way it worked out, but I think it would have worked out better for the election if there had
Right.
been a convention and she had gotten it that way. Still, uh, everybody who pointed fingers at Biden should now be pointing fingers at this guy who is wandering around like a zombie, not knowing what he's supposed to be doing, and trying to walk out before he swears in Tulsi Gabbard and having to be brought back. When you see him speaking, when he's talking about expanding his tariffs yet again, still telling that same lame lie that the news media will not and should every time he says it, call him on it and say, no, you're wrong. That's a lie. It's the American people who will be paying this. And that's why the prices are going up, you doddering fool.
Absolutely. Well, you talk about him seemingly confused and talking in circles. Donald Trump said before the election that he would end the Russia Ukraine war in 24 hours. All it was going to
Right.
take was a phone call. He
Mm-hmm.
ended up having a phone call
Yeah.
and said, "Yeah, things look good for the end of that war." The ironic thing is, in that conversation, there was one vital part missing, and that was Zelensky. It was just him and
Yeah.
Vladimir Putin talking, and we don't know what the hell was said. I've said to people that's reminiscent of when he was negotiating with the Taliban to end the war in
Yeah.
Afghanistan. He didn't talk to the Afghani politicians. He was just talking to the Taliban. Then he released 5 million Taliban terrorists. And of course, we know what happened.
Yeah.
They Biden pulled out at the time that Donald Trump had set up. This was his strategy. And then, of course, the Taliban comes in and takes over, and then Donald Trump tries to blame Biden for something that was his thing. But they asked him in this meeting. They said, "What do you think Russia should give up in this negotiation?" He he talked in circles. He talked about Ukraine. He talked about every other thing, but he couldn't say anything that Russia should give up. He's feeling like Ukraine should give up
Right.
or cede the land to them that they've already taken, and it's a perfect example of what we're dealing here with. He said he could end the war quickly, and I firmly believe that he thought that he could walk in, most powerful man in the world, go to Zelensky and say, "Here's what you need to do. You need to give Putin whatever he wants, and then we'll end this fucking thing." And then he would do it because Donald Trump is so powerful. I think he underestimated Zelensky. I don't think Zelensky is going to do that.
No, neither do I. And Hegseth, his defense secretary, was doing the same thing, saying basically Russia gets to keep everything, and that's too bad. But that's the way it is, and we're going to do that. Of course, he has no power to do that. It's really up to Zelensky now, and I'm hoping that Europe stands up in a big way and tells Trump to go fuck himself. We'll handle this and resupplies Ukraine as long as they need it. They could do it. They should do it because if they don't, we know what will be next. It will be another former Soviet possession that Trump will seek to take back. He's trying to restore the Russian Empire one at a time. He got Georgia. Now he's going to go for all of Ukraine that he can possibly get, and Poland and the Balkans are next on the menu.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is that the people in Europe are very angry with Donald Trump, very angry with the United States, and nervous about what's going on as well. They should be, because they see him going into Ukraine and then spreading further and further. So Donald Trump has, in the process, pissed off pretty much everybody in the world, including everybody in this country that is negatively affected by Donald Trump, and they're smart enough to realize it. There is some people that aren't. Uh, but Donald Trump, when you put him in this situation, say you're wrong, you need to backstep, he does one of two things. He doubles down and does it more, or he acquiesces and then comes out and says he won.
Yeah,
That's the only two things he can do in this situation.
that's the only two strategies he has. And let's be frank here. Donald Trump has never had a policy. He's never had an agenda. He's never had anything other than becoming powerful himself and making lots of money. That's it. He's never had any regard for the country at all in any way, just for the very rich who he thinks will like him and welcome him into their midst because that has always been his motivating factor. I mean, growing up in Queens, he looked longingly, over at
Manhattan.
the Manhattan, wanting to be a part of that, and everybody over there looking down on his family and so forth as a bunch of social climbers, which is what they were and still are and still regarded that way. Their money too new and so forth. Not that I have any affinity for old money. I don't. As a matter of fact, I hate it. But at the same time, I see what his motivation is, and it's that's where it comes from. But he has no plans, nothing like that. If you want to be honest, let's go all the way back to Nixon. There has not been a Republican president who had a real regard for this country. Nixon did in some ways. I mean, he started Clean Air and Water. Help me with
Right.
the initials. EPA, and so forth, and a few other things. But he was controlled pretty much by Harleman and not Harleman,
Haldeman.
Haldeman and Ehrlichman, and then you had
Right.
James Baker controlling Reagan, and to a certain extent George H.W. Bush. Although George H.W. Bush was probably the most independent Republican president that we've had since Eisenhower, but that's probably why he failed too. Because he didn't
Yeah.
have the real backing of those. Then you get to his son. I mean, Clinton was independent. Then you get to Shrub, Bush. He
Yeah.
was controlled by Dick Cheney and a couple of others. And then Obama is an independent president. And we see things getting done under both Clinton and Obama, messes getting cleaned up that were left for them and so forth. Then you get Trump. And once again, here he is controlled by Stephen Miller and obviously Elon Musk and other billionaires and so forth. And they are not independent players. The Republican presidents, including Nixon, have all been tools of the oligarchs who have been trying ever since they lost it to get back their complete control of the country. And they only lost it after the Great Depression through Roosevelt's policies and so forth. And they've been trying to get it back ever since. If you look at what Trump is doing now, it's trying to destroy everything that was created during the 1940s, 30s, and 40s by Roosevelt. All of the way for the working people to start generating wealth. That's what they're after. They want to
Right.
destroy that so that they don't have to worry about labor. They want to destroy the unions. They've pretty much succeeded. They want to destroy that so you have to work for what they want to pay for as many hours as they want you to work until you die. That is the Republican agenda as given to them by the oligarchs. That's all you need to know. And that should inspire you to put on your uniform like I did and declare that all enemies of the United States, foreign and domestic, need to perish.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people keep thinking Donald Trump is this evil genius and he's doing this and that. He's a buffoon. He's an idiot.
Exactly.
He's a puppet. It's all the other evil people around him manipulating him to do the things he's doing. I mean, if the Republican Party had any control over him at all, he wouldn't be doing half these things because he's doing a lot of damage to the Republican Party. They're still complicit with everything he does. They're afraid to go against him. I wonder, when he talks about going after Canada, going after Greenland, going after Panama, is this his way? I mean, it sounds simple minded, but this is Donald Trump. Is this his way to go to Vladimir Putin and say, we're trying to take over the world too? I'm a
Yeah.
tough guy too. That's
Yeah.
what it
I,
seems like.
I think that is absolutely what it is. 100%. Who knows? Maybe he was chatting with some of his buddies or something. Somebody mentioned Panama or something like that, and said, "Boom," that was his thing then. It's like the Gulf of Mexico renaming.
Yeah.
It's really stupid. Everybody knows it's stupid. Nobody else in the world is going to refer to it that way. And if you look at the map of the country when the country was getting started, everything from Florida through Texas all the way to California and up the coast, a complete crescent around that body of water was owned by Mexico. That's why it's the Gulf of Mexico, because they owned it in that sense, and that part of our country, of what is now our country, that we pretty much stole. The same way he wants to take Panama and Greenland. I mean, this was manifest destiny. If we see it, it's ours, right?
Well, the thing is, he sees it as a real effort, and I don't think most people do. But that said,
Mm-hmm.
the whole 51st state with Canada, what we're finding out is we think it's silly down here, but up there, they're taking it seriously. I mean, they're even
Yeah,
thinking of going to war over something like this if somebody's going to kind of intrude on their sovereignty. Um, and that's the scary thing because we're scaring and pissing off very close allies. And if
yeah.
we do that to all our close allies, which Donald Trump has a tendency to do, we become this isolated island doing everything for herself, and we know we can't do that. It just
Right.
can't be done.
Well, and this goes back to the hubris that Americans have about Europe. We saved you from Hitler. Well, no, Russia saved him from Hitler, quite frankly. Having to
Yeah,
fight on two fronts was what defeated Hitler. If he'd only had to fight Europe, he would have taken it in 2 weeks. But
yeah.
no, he had to put all of that against. Then we were fighting in Japan. We joined the effort. We lost a lot of really good people in some cases that we didn't have to. But remember, without the French, we're not a country.
Right.
We were not a country if Lafayette and the French had not kicked in, right? The British would have prevailed eventually. They could have lasted us out and so forth. That's why we need real history, not pablum to soothe our tender feelings. We need real history. And Trump knows nothing of history. He knows nothing of international relations. He just appointed a donut shop owner to be the ambassador to one of the South American countries. I forget which one it was, but this tells you how serious he is about the job.
Well, and then he pulls in Elon Musk and gives him free reign to do whatever he wants to do. I mean, he's unelected. He's probably an illegal immigrant. Yes, he's
He's certainly a
mostly.
sociopath.
Yeah, there's no question he's a sociopath, and he's not as bright as I think people want to make him out to be. He hasn't invented anything. He got a little money from his dad. He invested in PayPal, made a lot more money, and then he just started buying things. He didn't create anything. He's a lot like Donald Trump. Just put my name
Exactly.
on it. Just put my name on it, and I'll act like I'm the genius.
Right, and Tesla's falling apart. SpaceX is falling apart. They can't get he's he's telling Musk to bring home those two astronauts. Well, the two astronauts were reassigned. They're on duty now. There is a escape vehicle parked on the space station right now that in an emergency they could use. The only reason that they haven't gone up to get them is that they want two. They want one coming up, the other one leaves. One coming up, the other one leaves. So there's always an escape vehicle there. They could get them down if somebody had appendicitis, or well, there's probably a doctor there. But if there's some reason they had to evacuate, they could evacuate everybody today.
Yeah. What do we're dealing with a situation where Elon going into departments, firing people,
Mhm.
fucking with the financial aspects of it. This is all clearly illegal, and the courts are pushing back on it.
Yeah,
The question always is, but who's going to enforce it? How is that going to be? Uh, how are they going to be held accountable if they keep uh, going against court orders? Now, I know they've intimated that they were going to ignore some of these court orders. And I thought it was funny that Chief Justice Roberts seemed a little upset about by this.
yeah.
You can't do that because he's seeing that the courts will be weakened mightily if they do that. But the ironic thing is, Roberts built this fucking monster, and
Yeah.
now he's worried about it. He so fucking short sighted. It's unbelievable.
Well, yeah, remember every monster movie ever made where the scientist creates a problem, eventually eats him, right?
Right. Well, that's
or
true.
strangles him or whatever. So yeah, as far as Roberts goes, I would love to see him fall, but at the same time, we need him right now. We need the Supreme Court and Congress acting as two of the three co-equal branches of government, so that if the court says this is the way it is, then Congress has to say this is the way it is. Oh, and hey, Joint Chiefs of Staff, we got two of the three here. So why don't you go over and arrest Trump and his entire group? And I don't think they would be unsympathetic at this point. I really don't. It would give them cover, and I think that's what the Democrats and the courts should be aiming toward. They should be, if they haven't already, and I trust that maybe they have, developed a plan to do exactly that. Because quite frankly, we already alluded to Tulsi Gabbard being through a Russian asset being
Right.
sworn in as a head of our intelligence operations, a Russian agent being sworn in as head of our intelligence operation. Then we're going to have the other guy, Cash Patel, will head up the FBI. The CIA is being pretty much disbanded, or they're trying to. So our intelligence effort is being totally dismantled. Who benefits? Russia, China,
Yeah.
North
Yeah.
Korea, all the bad actors benefit if we are not constantly on alert. I worked in military intelligence. I know what I'm talking about. I know what these people are capable of. I know what we do on a weekly basis to stop them.
Yeah. So do you think that what people are worried about is that, like, for example, he ignores a court order, and then theoretically the federal marshals are there to enforce it. That's their
Right.
job.
Yep.
But then they're under the umbrella of the DOJ, and Donald Trump
Right.
controls the DOJ and Pam Bondi. What the fuck?
Right.
Um, will they shut them down? And then will the federal marshals actually take that order? I was listening to Glenn Kirshner, and he says, I don't think if they tell them not to do it, I don't think they will follow that lead. They have one or two jobs, and one of the main ones is enforcing court orders, and these
Yeah.
are legitimate court orders. What do you
Yeah.
think about that? Do you think Donald can game the whole thing?
I think I'm starting to see the scales fall from the eyes of some of the Republicans, particularly in the Senate. I don't see it so much in the House, but you will soon, because a lot of the House members are from agricultural states and farmers are getting ready to take it in the shorts. We will see a repeat of the, was it the 80s, where all the farms went into bankruptcy?
Right, right.
You remember that? We're going to see that again, because already what Trump did the other day, I saw a farmer saying, I'm going to lose my farm because I invested in all of this, and now he just canceled it. He just canceled it, and I'm going to lose my shirt, unless that's restored. So this is going to have, this morning when he was talking about this new tariff policy he's putting in, farmers are going to love it, he says, which is bullshit, because there are very few things that we make they can't get somewhere else, and that's what they will do. It's just like what happened with soybeans a couple of years ago when he was in.
Yep.
And just exactly like that. Farmers took it in the short, and he had to bail them out. So there's only so much bailing you can do. We need to talk about the Republican budget, by the way, here shortly. But
Yeah, yeah. We're definitely going to talk about that because that's interesting. But I want to just mention one thing about the bailout.
yeah,
The farmers got their ass kicked with Donald
right,
Trump and his tariffs. He bailed them out. But we know Donald Trump is very transactional.
right,
He bailed them out for one very good reason, because he needed their votes.
right.
And he got their votes. This time around, he doesn't need their votes. He doesn't need anything.
Not going to bail them.
He'd rather put that money in his pocket than save farmers. So if these farmers think he's going to bail them out again, and they're counting on that, I don't know that I would.
Yeah, that's the automobile industry is the same way. The aluminum and steel. tariffs that he put in place are going to affect them very negatively. I heard the chairman of Ford talking and saying this is going to destroy our industry, and that already they're looking at the investments they've made here in my home state of Tennessee to make batteries for electric vehicles, because, of course, he has reversed all of Biden's work on that. So those manufacturing facilities may never open. And the state of Tennessee has invested huge amounts of money in the infrastructure to get these things up and running, and gave money to the automobile companies to build these and to create community colleges specific there to teach the skills that will be needed. It's going to impact the state. It's going to impact the automobile industry. And, if you own a Toyota dealership, you're going to be making some money, but nobody else is.
Yeah, no shit. Well, do you think when these things start to hit, is that finally the moment when these people who support Trump, like Ford, for example, they support Trump and now they're whining about what's going to happen? Do you think that's the moment in time when they say, "Holy fuck, we fucked up," or do they just
I,
keep doing what they're doing?
well, I don't think they really believed him. See, that's what it comes down to. And that really ticks me off, because this guy is not hard to figure out. As
No,
you said, he is simply transactional. And by that, we mean if he and someone else are trying to strike a deal, he not only has to win, but the other one has to lose. So that's the way he works. He
right.
has to win in some way in his mind, but the other also has to lose. So he will never, ever compromise. He has to win. And the game of politics is the game of compromise. International relations, a game of compromise. You both get something, you both lose something. That's the way it works. But his mind cannot conceive of that.
When I was in business, I did some negotiations, and I quickly figured out there were a lot of people out there that wanted to win no matter what. It was an ego thing with them.
Yep.
And I had to sit down and explain to him. I said, look, you're doing a deal with this guy and I'm helping you do it. If this deal ends up where you win big and he loses big, that's good for you today, but there are no more deals.
Right.
They aren't going to deal with you again if they keep losing doing deals with you. So have a little foresight. Look beyond the end of your nose and realize you got to have some kind of compromise so everybody feels good about the deal so we can continue doing deals. There's one thing that happened, and I don't know that people are looking at it like this, but this showed me a little crack in what Donald Trump is doing. We know the situation where Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City,
Mm-hmm.
is been charged with multiple crimes.
Just got off, though, pretty much.
Well, yeah, I don't know if he's officially got off yet, but he will get
It's
off.
looking that way. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing about it was where Donald Trump loses in this whole situation. Eric Adams, an African American, a Democrat, goes down and sees Donald Trump, and then within a couple of days, they say drop all charges against my guy. Just drop
Yeah.
all the charges. And so then Donald Trump says that to Pam Bondi and the DOJ. Pam Bondi was going to be above reproach and all this stuff. She said, sure, anything you want. And then
Yeah.
they sent it up to the Southern District.
Yeah.
Southern District looks at it, and a federal prosecutor there who was appointed by Donald Trump says, "Now
No.
this is weird. This is unethical. I'm not doing it. You got to do it. I'm not doing it. I quit." And then about 4 or 5 other people quit. The reason I think this is interesting is because it's now all over the media. It's an embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like quid pro quo, and it
Of course
probably
it is.
was.
Of course it is.
Um, Donald Trump cut a deal with Eric Adams. Eric Adams wanted to get off his crimes. Who doesn't? Donald Trump wanted special access to New York with regards to his deportations and raids and that sort of thing. So it was a quid pro quo. But this is out there now, and this is bugging Donald Trump. I saw him interviewed, and somebody asked about it. They talked about the Eric Adams things, and he does what he always does. First of all, he goes, "Yeah, I don't know much about it." Really,
Yeah.
bitch? Because you just had a meeting with him, and 2 days
Yeah.
later, You asked to get him off, but you don't know anything about it. And then they take it a step further and they said, well, that federal prosecutor quit. And he says, no, she didn't. She got fired. Well, no, she didn't. I saw the resignation letter. And besides, you just said you didn't know anything about it. So what the
Yeah,
fuck's up? But this is what Donald Trump does. He fucking flails. He makes shit up on the spot, trying to get him out of a tight situation. But my point is that because this is out there in the media, it's not a legal thing for him. He's not going to jail over it or anything, but it embarrassed him.
yeah,
It makes him look bad. And that is the worst thing you can do to somebody like Donald Trump.
absolutely. And that they have to keep doing that because the base will never turn on him. They would drink the Kool-Aid gladly if he handed it to them or had one of his minions deliver it to their house. They would guzzle that shit like champagne because that they are that deep in, right? I'm talking about the MAGA crowd. They some of them are cynical, like uh, Bobert and Taylor Green and people like that. They're just in it for what they can get out of it. But the true believers, the voters, yeah, they're in it forever. The ones who wear his shirts and stuff everywhere they go and put it in their yard and on their car and all of that. Yeah, they're there forever. There's no problem with you'll never, but they're only maybe 25, 28%, something like that. Don't need them, don't want them. Want to deport somebody, have at it. But the others, the farmers, the people who work at the penny factory, these people who start seeing it impact them when a fifth generation Hispanic family is deported, that sort of thing. And it will happen. It will happen. If your name is Hispanic, you're in trouble. Sorry, but you are. And I really am sorry because I have a lot of really good Hispanic friends. And I worry for them. I really do. And they worry for themselves. Also, my LGBTQ friends are very worried, as they should be. And women really should be.
Yeah. Yeah, they should be. I mean, we even got the whole bright red state of Alabama shitting their pants because
Mm-hmm.
he's cutting off funds to the biggest employer, which happens to be a university,
Yep.
and they don't know what to do. I also heard a story that because of something Donald Trump did, everybody in Alabama, their electric bill went up by $100.
Yep.
And the electric company was so upset about this, they said, this is because of Donald Trump. This is not us. This is about Donald Trump. And that goes further to the embarrassment for Donald Trump. And he's not going to be able to juggle as many. He's such a fuck up that he'll do so many things that are embarrassing. He won't be able to juggle them all.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out so many things because none of this is really Trump, of course. This is Musk not knowing what he's doing either,
Right.
acting out of this hubris that he has this big brain and can know how to do anything. He
Yeah.
he he's screwed up every business he's ever had, and pretty soon now you're going to see even more. I think Tesla's doomed, quite frankly. I
Yeah.
saw that Europe is canceling orders like crazy. There's whole lots full of Teslas they can't get rid of because nobody wants to explode and that sort of thing. But he's going to keep doing this. He's going to keep pissing people off, and you start to see things that you wonder about, like this Guantanamo thing, where they're supposed to be putting these Hispanic criminals. Who is really going there? That's what I want to know. Who is really going there? Who's paying for this? Also, I just noticed Mississippi as one of the states who have refused to pass an anti-slavery ordinance.
Yeah.
That is basically getting ready to start rounding up Hispanics and using them for slave labor in the South. And I'm sure Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama uh, are all poised to do that. I just heard a thing a while back, just a few weeks ago, where they found two meatpacking companies almost exclusively staffed by young Hispanic children. I wonder where they came from, huh? Wonder where their moms and dads are. I reckon.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is the kind of thing that's going on. What Musk is going after, with Trump's blessing, is destroying the regulatory system because he's under like 44, I think it is, different investigations for safety
Right.
violations, labor violations, and so forth. Those are the agencies he's targeting, the ones who are coming after him. There's no debate about this. There's no doubt about it. He's doing it.
He is doing it. Then yesterday, something came out about this contract where the government was buying $400 million worth of Tesla armored vehicles. Well,
Yeah,
that got a backlash. I mean, it just
yeah,
goes to show that if people speak out and push back, changes can come. And what happened is that document was pulled back, but I think they reissued the document saying the same thing except taking the Tesla name out of it. So a
yeah.
lot of people reported it that, well, Tesla isn't getting that deal. That doesn't mean that. It
No.
just means they're not going to talk about it ahead of time. They were stupid for doing that. When it comes down to spending the money at some point down the road, trust me, they'll try to slip it to fucking Tesla.
Yeah. Now, let's just because of the name thing. You heard about Fort Bragg, right?
Yeah, kind of, but please tell us.
Well, because General Bragg was a Confederate general and an all-around nasty person, right? They changed the name of Fort Bragg to Fort Liberty. Well, one of the new Hegseth, the new Defense Secretary's actions was to change the name back, looking very, macho about it. We've changed it back to Fort Bragg, but if you read the paperwork, they changed it in honor of this non-commissioned officer who won a Silver Star for saving some other soldiers. So they named it after him, not after the Confederate general. So it is Fort Bragg, but it's not that Fort Bragg anymore.
Oh, so they dug through the archives and found some
Yeah,
guy named Bragg and go, we'll name it after him.
yeah, it's rare that somebody with a silver star, which is, I don't mean to demean that award. It's good. One of my uncles had one, and it does go for bravery. But they usually, look for someone a little more prominent than that. I think it's fine if you want to name something after somebody who wins a silver star. They're still brave and exemplary soldiers. But to lie about it, that demeans the whole thing.
Yeah, it's about intent. It's kind of akin to Republicans in a election and having their opponent, the Democratic opponent named Steve Davis, and then they
Yeah.
grab some other Steve Davis and put him in the election too to split up the votes. It's pretty fucking slimy. Now, Ed, I know you were anxious to talk about this next subject. I am too. I think there's a lot of people worried about it, so we do need to talk about it. And of course, I'm referring to the Republican proposed budget. That's all kinds of fucked up.
Yeah. Well, the big thing, of course, is they want to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion, and why they want to do that, of course, is because they have used the debt ceiling to plague Biden throughout his 4 years. He's had to fight and compromise and give this, give that, the whole way to get them to raise the debt ceiling, and it's always been just by the at the last minute with the speaker putting together some sort of deal or something like that, and it's always been a trauma, and it's been a way to keep the administration in power, the Biden administration, from actually accomplishing anything. That's all it's
Right.
about. Now suddenly they're in, and so they want to remove that by giving this huge increase in the debt ceiling, $4 trillion. Okay, but the other thing, it just so happens they want to cut taxes on billionaires and corporations by just around that amount. So
Isn't that amazing?
isn't that amazing? It's amazing coincidence. You don't see those that often.
But in
You-
addition to that, they want to make some deep cuts on us.
oh, of course they do. And in addition to what Trump's already doing, of course.
Right. But we're talking Medicaid, we're talking maybe Social Security, we're talking veterans benefits, we're talking all the things that most people are afraid to touch because it's political suicide, but that's
Yeah.
all in this bill.
Yep.
And I'm thinking the reason it's all in this bill is because we've got Republican cowards. If they were
Yeah.
going to try to do these things, they wouldn't try to do it all at once. They do it
Right.
in bits and pieces. That would be the smart way to do it. But Donald Trump is go big or go home guy. We're going to throw this all in there. We're gonna pass this thing because we have the majority. I think he's underestimating or overestimating his ability because, in my mind, in spite of all the things we hear, and the media will tell you, oh my God, Social Security, oh my God, Medicaid, no way that fucking bill passes the House or the Senate.
I certainly hope not. I'm well past saying that can't happen because I've seen too
Yeah,
many things that couldn't happen, including Trump getting elected to a second term, happen. But at the same time, I do believe that it is political suicide for any party to try to touch Social Security, and now Medicare, quite frankly. Medicaid, they might get away with some cuts because poor people don't have the power that others do. And people may say,
right.
well, as long as it's not me, do whatever you want to do. But they don't realize that, like, I have two hospitals here, right? I was at one of them this morning getting my annual CPAP machine checkup and so forth. Um, you get rid of Medicaid, that hospital is not there anymore. In the adjoining county, Hancock County, there's a hospital there. That too will be gone. As a matter of fact, pretty much every rural hospital that there is will fold because they are dependent on Medicaid. They
Right.
are totally dependent on Medicaid because the people don't have the money. These people are working in most cases for minimum wage or less, or they have their own lawn mowing business, which they can only use about 8 months out of the year, that kind of thing. It's become a personal service economy down here, and of course they're not paying taxes on that because they're not reporting most of it. It's all under the table, the unseen economy almost, but it will affect healthcare dramatically. And then right now, I don't go to either of these hospitals. It's just that my sleep machine provider happens to be housed there because it's not really a hospital anymore. It's kind of a triage unit for the bigger hospitals in
Right.
Kingsport, Johnson City, and Bristol. But they too will be very much impacted, and doctors and medical providers of all sorts will be heavily hit should Medicaid be. I was amused, not really, but I heard somebody or saw someone online saying, "I'm not worried about Medicaid. I have TennCare." Guess what? TennCare is. It's the Tennessee
Yeah.
name for it.
For
So,
Medicaid. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
they're that stupid. But at the same time, I don't wish them to die of things that they don't have to die from. Right now, if they have insurance, it's such a bad policy that they can't afford to have a procedure because they can't pay the copay. I've seen people. I'm saving up for my operation copay. That should not
Don't you
happen.
don't you think um I have another guest on here from time to time, Will, and he always brings this term up. If you were to make those kind of cuts and impact those kinds of people and hospitals and such, don't you think that's the point where the pitchforks and torches come out?
God,
I
I
mean,
hope
people,
so. I
I would
just
think
hope they
so.
go in the right direction. These people are very short sighted, and some of them see, their pastors telling them Trump's the second coming of Christ. And there are some that are actually doing that. And,
Definitely.
so they're believing that. And they would direct their ire more locally, I think. I see it frequently when I see something that is definitely because of the federal government. But they're looking at their local commissioner going, well, it's his fault, that sort of thing. Back a while back, the state cut um, some of the funds that they provided for welfare, I want to call it that locally. One of my aunts happened to be one of the administrators in that particular government entity, and she was getting all kinds of calls and threats and so forth, saying, "You're driving an awfully new car, and they just cut my money. I know where my money went." That kind of thing. They don't have the knowledge to see what is actually happening. And when he talks about cutting government waste, they think, yeah, they need to take all that money they're giving to them black people and give it to us white people. That's what they think.
No, you're absolutely right. When they propose a bill like this that just cannot pass, it just,
We hope.
well, I can't imagine how it would. I mean, it would be death to any politician who signs on to that. But I wonder if it isn't. I have to put my dumb fuck evil motherfucker hat on to understand this, but I can get in people's heads. I wonder and see what you think about this. They want to raise the debt limit by 4 trillion and they want all these draconian cuts.
Right.
Do they maybe realize these draconian cuts they're not going to get? So they say it's a negotiation ploy. Okay, we'll
Yeah.
back off the draconian clutch, but just give us the 4 trillion. It's like the old thing where you go to dad and say, I want a new car. And he said, no. And well, how about a ride? And then they'll give you the ride,
Yeah.
trying to get something out of it by leveraging something that you can't get, just asking for the world.
Yeah.
That makes
But
sense.
it does, except for I think every Republican politician is terrified of Trump because they've seen his propensity to target people.
Yeah.
And that he would have no problem at all targeting a congressman in Tennessee or Louisiana or New York or wherever, or a senator, whoever, trying to primary them or whatever. And since most of the Republican Party now, have to say, is only there for self-interest, they have no interest at all in public service or anything. Let me get a drink here.
But I was going to ask you this. I know what you're saying about him targeting people, and I've heard people say this before. Democrats will say a lot of Republicans uh, don't like what Donald Trump's doing, but they won't come out because they're afraid. And somebody says, "What do you mean afraid?" And they'll say something like, "Well, what happened to Adam Kinzinger?" Oh, okay. So you only care about your job, your money, and your power. Okay, we know who you are at this point. But if they are worried about that shit, say we've got a senator from Alabama, your whole state is in turmoil and broke as a bitch because of the things that Donald Trump did. Now, the senator might say, well, I'm afraid of Donald Trump because he might primary me. But what about the rest of the people, the constituents in that fucking state who may just vote you out? You're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place at that point. You could piss off Donald Trump or everybody you count on for voting for you.
Well, if people paid attention, I think that would actually be true. But Ted Cruz is still a senator, and
Yeah.
Tommy Tuberville is still a senator, and they're both wastes of space. As a matter of fact, I can no longer find that many um, Republican senators that I consider anything less than a waste of space, and I have to feel that way about some Democrats too.
Oh,
Uh, that they are there because this is their job and it is their way to get very rich very quick. Every year, I think that some entity should publish the net worth of every congressman, every House
I
member,
agree.
every senator, and show. Okay, when you became a senator, you had a net worth of $750,000. Now you're worth 60 million. I'd like a chart of how you manage that. You must be a financial genius.
Yeah.
And if you're a congressperson, you go from $60,000 to 10 million in 2 years. There's something going on there we need to know about. So yeah, it's not the waste in government that's the problem so much. It is the opportunities they're given by lobbyists and corporations to make a lot of money with a little bit of information.
Yeah. There, that's the one thing about Republicans will always say, well, what about all the hundreds of billions of dollars of waste that Elon's already found? And I said, well,
Mm-hmm.
like what? I mean, I haven't seen any evidence yet. You didn't have any evidence of Joe Biden taking a bribe, but you kept talking about that. Don't you want to see some evidence of this? I mean, it's one thing just to repeat what Elon says, but you're not on ketamine. So what the fuck do you know?
Yeah, exactly. What? How many guys has he got doing this? Five or six, and they're all
Yeah.
like, 18 years old or something. And I mean, I know what I was like at that point. I don't want you knowing anything. Uh, and
Yeah.
two of them, one's a Nazi, and one of them stole proprietary information from his previous employer and was fired. So, are they still in there? I don't know. I know he was upset with the reporter who broke that story, but obviously there's some stuff going on here. The barn door may already be too far open. I mean, they've been in there long enough. Who knows how much they've sent to Russia already, or wherever, the
Right.
information that they got their hands on. It's one thing to say no, you can't do that, and the courts stop it. But if it's already done, what is to happen? It's like when they let those guys out from January 6th. They were asking Trump. They gave him one specific about this guy who brutally attacked this particular police officer, and which resulted in his death. And you pardoned him. Well, was that a pardon or was that just a commutation? We're doing a lot of things, but he's already out. You let him out. We're
Doesn't matter
looking
what you
at
call
that.
it.
No, you're not looking at that. You're lying, and they need to say that. Okay, they don't get back in the press room again, but still, it needs to be said. You're a fucking liar. That's what they
Well,
need to say.
yeah, yeah, and he's been pressed a couple of times by some reporters, not enough. And
Yeah.
that's always been the issue with Donald Trump. Had they pressed him on his lies and his bullshit and his ignorance, we wouldn't be dealing with this right now. So I put a lot of blame on the media. It's getting a little stronger now. Like, for example, he was doing a press conference or something, and it was being played on Fox News.
Mhm.
And somebody said, Mitch McConnell didn't vote for Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard. What do you think about that? And he basically went off on Mitch McConnell not being of a right mind to be able to do that. He's not doing well. He's not on top of things. In fact, he wasn't on top of things 10 years ago. If it wasn't for me, the Republican Party would be dead. I mean, that's just a ridiculous statement. And even Fox News had to shut it off eventually because it was so
Yeah.
absurd.
Well, doesn't he? Of course, he doesn't remember, or he doesn't want to remember that Mitch McConnell gave him the Supreme Court, which
Yeah.
gave him, which destroyed Roe v. Wade and other things. I mean, that was Mitch. Mitch did that. He gave Trump three appointments to the Supreme Court. That was all Mitch.
Do you think Mitch is a it's hard to say with me. Every time you think Mitch is going to do the right thing, he just falls in line behind Donald Trump. I mean, he goes back and forth with Trump hating him and Trump liking him and all this other stuff. I would hope that because he's going to retire, we'd have a more reasonable mind on the Republican side in the Senate. I just don't know with him though.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. Maybe he's dying and he doesn't want to go to hell. I don't know. I can't imagine why you would just not vote for Tulsi Gabbard or Kennedy or who else.
Right.
Uh, you really needed to rally some other people so they were defeated. If you have power, and you do, you know where the bodies are buried. You know who got those tips from the lobbyist. You were one of them. You know how to get
Yeah.
rich. You know who got rich and why. You know all that. You can have your colleagues do anything you want to if you've been there long enough. And he has. And he's got enough on everybody that he could do it. So why is he grandstanding by taking these votes? I'm not sure. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah. It's a strange situation. As I said before, a lot of these Republicans know Donald Trump is bad for this country, doing negative things for democracy, but they're so afraid that they won't say anything. They're more fearful about their position than they are the future of this country.
I
That right
would
there tells me these people should not be in the positions they're in.
That's right. I would encourage every elected official right now. Actually, I wouldn't encourage them. I would like them to be forced to read aloud the preamble to the Constitution.
Right.
If I think I can remember, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. Ha ha, right. Provide for the common defense. Yeah, right. That what you're doing is weakening our common defense. Promote the general welfare. Yeah, no, you're promoting a few oligarchs. Everything that's in that preamble, including securing the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, it's going against that. That's the preamble. That's why the Constitution was written.
Yeah.
And everything that the Republican Party has done and is doing violates those tenets. Everything. Provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. There's a couple of others I can't think of right now that I will eventually, but just read it. Read the preamble to the Constitution. When we're done here today, I encourage you to go look at it and compare that to Republican policy and tell me if it's not a joke.
That's definitely a joke. Going back to that Republican budget that's so fucking ridiculous. I don't honestly believe it will pass. Maybe it's hopeful thinking, but I just it doesn't make any sense that it would pass because it would kill a lot of Republicans, if not immediately, in short term, because it would be so devastating to a lot of people in red states that survive solely on Medicare and Social Security. So I just can't imagine them doing it. But what we should do, and I've said this before, take a page out of the Republican Party. See what they did to win in 2024. One of the things they did, they complained about prices. Donald Trump said he would drop prices day one. Consumer price index is up by 0.5%.
Yeah.
Inflation is
Inflation's
up
up
by half,
three. Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
going
It's up
to
to 3%.
and it's going to go higher and higher. We need to stand on the mountaintop and crow that every day and point the finger at Donald Trump, just like they did with Joe Biden. But in addition to that, on this budget thing, assuming it doesn't pass, I can't imagine it will. But even if it doesn't pass, we should take an accounting of every person that voted for it
Yeah.
because it's so damaging to this country. It's contrary to what this country promises. And then we need to be touting those names day in and day out. They voted against this country. They voted against you, even though it didn't pass. This is who we're dealing with. Do we need these kind of fucks in this Congress?
Right. And every Republican who spoke up against raising the debt ceiling every time it came up last year should be forced, their words should be the clips of them saying we can't raise the debt ceiling, and yet here they are trying to raise it by $4 trillion. Their
And
own
people
words should be used against them every time.
absolutely. And that's what the Republicans would have done. The Democrats don't typically do that. But now it's time for a little fucking change in the way the Democrats do things. Because you said it before, you were talking about some Democratic senators, but maybe I'm just negative about this, but I don't like any Republicans, whether they align themselves with Donald Trump or not. Even if they don't align themselves with Donald Trump, they support him. So, as
Right.
far as I'm concerned, they're just as accountable as anybody. They're just as responsible. But we've got Democrats too. We've got the Fettermans. We've got the Moskowitzes that kind of wishy washy and lean to the right sometimes and do some fucked up shit. I'm almost at a point where I can only think of a handful of Democrats that I feel fully confident of,
Yeah,
and
me
that's a
too.
problem. And that's a
Yeah, it
problem.
is. It is a problem. And that goes back to the states. I mean, I don't have to worry about Democratic congressmen or Democratic senators here in Tennessee. We have very few of them, and certainly not in the eastern part where I am. I don't think there's a single Democrat in the not only in the national in the Congress, but in the state Congress, for that matter, from this area. I don't think
Right.
there's one. I mean, I personally in the last election, I went to the courthouse to vote, and the single sign representing Harris Waltz, those they're like a little plastic envelope that slip over a little metal frame.
Yeah.
There was like a 6-inch strip by the front of the courthouse where they would allow those. Well, it was lying down on the ground, so I went in and I put it back up. And there was man and wife were walking in, I assume to vote, and she said, "We don't need that sign here." And I said, "Nonetheless, it's going to stay here." And I put it, put it back. Well, it lasted a day, but I mean, this is the mindset. I mean, this is a free and fair election. Anybody is allowed to have signs there, not just because you think that the one candidate is better than the other, that the other one shouldn't even be allowed to be represented.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody who voted for Trump has a stake in this. And am I a terrible person that I really hope that they suffer for it so that they can begin to see? If I'm a terrible person, then I take that on. But I hope they do suffer. I hope that every person who works at that penny manufacturing place who voted for Trump loses their job.
Yeah. You know, I always say I hope all of them suffer mightily, and I don't care
Yeah,
what happens to them. And people think, well, you're being insensitive and you're being mean. Fact
right.
is, I'm just being practical. Because after you've seen what you've seen and heard what you've heard and watched what you've watched for 8 years, apparently that's the only way you're going to fucking learn. So I
Yeah.
want you to be educated. And if you have to burn yourself down to learn that lesson, well, that's on you, not on me. And if I take joy in you learning, I'm not that bad a guy.
No, you're not. Well, what troubles me is the people that I went to school with. I moved back here. I should have taken my cue from Thomas Wolfe, who said, "You can't go home again," right? This
Yeah,
famous
yeah,
novel. He's right. You can't because people change or they don't. And in this case, they didn't. And that was the problem. I assumed that they had changed. That because when we grew up, no black people were employed in the town in any capacity except at the grade school um, cafeteria. The staff was black because the principal and his wife were liberal Presbyterians,
right.
and had the power to hire them and did, and the courage. Ben Cunningham, Mrs. Cunningham, two very courageous people. I celebrate them, and the others were men who shined shoes in the barber shops, black men who shined shoes in the barber shops, or women who were nannies and cooks and so forth, and guys who were yard men and that sort of thing, but no legitimate job. None of the factories had any blacks working in them except janitors and so forth. I saw that. These people I went to school saw that. And then now, even in this day, they say, well, we've never had a race problem here. No, you
Yeah,
haven't. You haven't had a race problem. The black people certainly did, you moron.
absolutely. You know, people are always talking about what are the Democrats going to do in 2028. No one seems to know. But I got a little hint of something, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I'm trying to think like a Democrat. Um, there was an interview with Tim Walz recently. It was maybe a
Mm-hmm.
local interview. What are you going to do next? He said, well, I'm governor for a couple of years. I like being a governor. Maybe I'll be a governor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. That'd be fine. I think he's a great governor. I'd love to have him as governor. But then a couple of days later, U.S. Senator Tina Smith says, I'm not running for reelection.
I saw that. I
Oh,
wondered. I wanted to ask you about what the buzz on the street was. Was it going to be
well,
Tim?
it sounds like a lot of people want to run. It sounds like his his lieutenant governor wants to run, who's a very formidable person. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just, if you're going to put Tim
Native
Walz
American,
up,
right? She's Native American, right?
she's Native American, right?
Okay.
And she'd be a wonderful governor. But but it just seems like it's all aligning the right way. It's aligning a lot like Barack Obama. Remember, Barack Obama ended up going in and a couple of years, and then he ran for
Yeah.
president. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of why they would do this. Well, Tim was a very well received guy. They liked him.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He's older, but he's not decrepit.
I'm going to say this, and some people will hate me for it, but if the roles had been reversed, he would be president because
Well,
the American people are just that.
racist
Um,
and sexist.
yeah, sexist is what I was going to say for sure. That we're they unfortunately being a woman is not a plus if you're running for president. I'm sorry to say that. I voted for Hillary. I voted for Kamala. I wanted them to win. But
Yeah, absolutely.
my fellow old white guys, and I assume young white guys, the ones who, if they bother to vote, um, said no, but then so did about half the white women. So I don't know what's
But
going on there. You guys need to sort that shit out.
but do you think I'm pushing too far? I mean, I understand how politics work. And like I say, Tim Walz, well received, well known now, popular, a male, and white.
Yeah.
Those all are important things for the next presidential candidate. We've talked about a lot of potential candidates, Gavin Newsom and the like. I don't know that Tim Walz is the best candidate, but it sounds like they're throwing out a trial balloon here
Yeah.
because they're going to want him to run for senator. He's too popular not to run for senator. And he won't be that far away from the vice presidential run a couple of years. And then he can run for Senate, put in 2 years in the Senate. If he's lucky, they have the majority in the Senate. He can make some fucking noise. And then he could be a hot prospect for that. I'd be cool with him if he ran for president. I don't know if he's the best option because I don't know if he gives that presidential vibe, but he is everyman vibe, which may be where that has to go.
I think it does because when you look at the country, most people live in cities, but there's a lot of people that are countrified who live in cities. But I
Yeah.
do think that regular guy kind of vibe is what would definitely work for him. And I encourage it. I also think he is well spoken in that he can go off the cuff and get his point across, and that is very very valuable, and still have that regular guy vibe, and come from a state where he had to work with Democrats and Republicans in order to
And was
um,
successful with it.
exactly one of the most successful states in the country. You've got to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that worked against him, and I don't mean this as a sexist statement,
Mhm.
I mean this more as a hierarchy thing. I don't think his role as the sidekick or the one taking orders from a boss, whether it be a woman or a man or black or white, that's not him. Him in power,
Yeah,
the thing about it is what we find out from Donald Trump, he's a simple-minded fuck that just says shit.
yeah,
And that's what gets people's attention. Now, Tim knows what he's talking about. He's a smart guy, but he talks in that way,
yeah.
like every man way. He'll tell a joke, you get people laughing. He's not one of these uptight politicians, which you might get that impression from Kamala or other people, the establishment. They might perceive him as something other than establishment too, because he doesn't really fit that mold.
Yeah, I strongly think that the ability to laugh at oneself, the ability to be affable in situations where other people would become flustered and hector at people and lecture. I'd never seen that from him. But at the same time, I still have my hat that says "Mind your own damn business,"
Right.
and I wear it out occasionally just to say to stick it in people's face. But I do believe that really resonated with people. That attitude of let's take care of one another, but keep your nose out of my business. You don't know anything about it. And
Right.
that's
He's got a
something
nice
we get
balance.
back to. Yes,
He's got a nice
exactly.
balance. And his personality, unlike Kamala or some of the other politicians, he'd be kind of the media would love him
Oh, yeah.
because he's good press in a good way, as opposed to what Donald Trump does. He'd be the antithesis of Donald Trump, but he would be good TV.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, the first person who comes out with a book is the one who's going to be the nominee. You watch. If you see the wit and wisdom
Oh,
or of this one or that one, that's going to be the key because it's a great fundraising tool for one thing, but it also gets people talking. Well, Tim Walz came out with a book and he says this, right? I think you'll see that. I've noticed that with politicians who are getting ready to do something, you'll see that happen.
well,
They
and the
don't
thing about it is,
usually write it, but it's out there with their name on it.
I don't honestly know if Tim Walz wants to be president of the United States or not. I'm just looking at all options coming for 2028 because I don't really care. It's a matter of the only thing for sure is we've got to win. But but in 28, Tim will be he's 4 years younger than I am, so he'll be
Yeah,
64.
right.
Not
Perfect.
not too old, but if he waits another 4 or 8 years, he will be too old, relatively speaking, with all the young people in this crowd. That's the other thing about Tim Walz. He does appeal, even though he's an older white guy, he does appeal to young people. So
Yeah.
that when I first heard it, I thought, yeah, nah, Tim could never be the candidate. Now I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'm thinking, he fucking could. He might. He maybe could.
He could. I mean, a year ago, I would have said that Gavin Newsom was the anointed, right?
Yeah.
Now I wonder with the California fires and a lot of stuff that happened there, if he's not wounded to a certain degree, we'll see what happens. If I were Gavin Newsom, the first thing I would do would say, all that federal tax we collected, we're keeping it. We
Yeah.
need it here. I guess Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama are going to have to find another teat to suck on because
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
we need it
Well,
here. Our people are hurting. We're keeping that federal tax. Screw you.
well,
Come
and
get it.
I like Gavin Newsom too, but he has one problem that I think is a turnoff for the Democrats. He's a little too slick. He's
Yeah.
a little too establishment. And
Yeah.
people clearly, by voting for Donald Trump, this country has clearly stated we don't like the establishment bullshit. We don't like that. And the
Yeah.
Democrats, DNC proved that too with getting Ken Martin as the chairman of the DNC over the guy in Wisconsin who was supported by Pelosi and Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. That might tell us there's a tide changing in the Democratic Party going, we're tired of these old fucks. We're tired of establishment. We want somebody who's there for us. And honestly, if you look at all the possible candidates that might be sitting in Congress, Tim Walz is probably the best one to fill that mold.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I believe in generational change too. And I think the Pelosi's and the Schumers and those guys, those were the guys who lost this last election. It wasn't Kamala and Tim. It was
Agreed.
not being able to tell the story or get it out there in a way that people could understand and endorse. I mean, Joe Biden did a terrific job as president. He took inflation from 8% down to 2%. He got infrastructure going. A lot of those projects, by the way, will be stopped.
Yeah.
And the like with the electric cars, those initiatives and so forth that are going to be stopped too. He did great things, and he should have had another term, or someone should have had another term to continue those policies. I don't think it should have been Joe. Sorry. Thank you, Joe, for what you did, but you should have stopped. Now, we need new blood. We need new people that are able to speak the languages of a new generation. I don't know if Schumer and Pelosi and the ones you mentioned, I don't know if they can deal with the technology, if they can reach the people who are actually going to get out and vote. I don't
Right.
know if that's the case because they have old methods. I don't know that those methods work anymore. I mean, if you've got young guys listening to Joe Rogan, you need somebody. You need a counterpart to Joe Rogan. And who's the guy? Turning Point USA, that snarky little bastard.
Oh
Um,
yeah, Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk. You need to bring up people who are going to be the antithesis of those guys, equally popular. You need to develop that sort of thing because the surrogates are what's driving it now. And those two I mentioned did a great deal of work for Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, they did an incredible amount of work for them. And I think, you and I work in communications all our life. And it's important to understand if you're in communications, times change. I
Yeah,
mean, if we go back to the '60s and listen to the disc jockeys back then, it's 2 o'clock, 45 degrees outside. Let's hear from such and such. You couldn't
yeah,
do that now. The
no.
news, the way we did it back then, you couldn't do that now. Things are different, and you've got to change with the times, and you got to at least seem like you can relate to people. I think that's more now with podcasts and stuff. Instead of these stuffed shirts who spew at you, you need somebody who's more personable, somebody
Exactly.
can connect to.
Let me bring up something here that's been on my mind for quite. You watched the Super Bowl, I assume, or part of it.
I did.
Did you watch the halftime show?
I did watch the halftime show.
What was your gut reaction?
And the immediate reaction was
Yeah,
was this. I'm 64 years old. I don't mind rap. There's some rap I like. I watched it, and I know Kendrick Lamar is hugely talented. He's got a Pulitzer Prize. He's talented. There's no question. But when I watched it, the first thing I thought, I don't get it. I didn't get it. And for me, I like music with a melody, so it
yeah,
really didn't hit me. I mean, Eminem has melodies. Some
yeah.
of these other ones have melodies, and it's just by virtue of who I am, where I grew up, and what I know now. I didn't hate it because I was very impressively choreographed and stuff, but I just didn't get it up until the time I started hearing people telling me what he did, what he was doing, and then I look at it, I go, "Fuck, that's good."
Well, this is the thing, you know. In addition to being a radio guy, I'm a theater guy. So
Right,
I looked at that and I said, this is a theatrical performance, and this is people are not going to get this because it's art. This is art, and
right.
it's not what they usually see at a halftime show. It may take weeks or months for it to sink in, but I really do believe the people who watch that images are powerful and they're subliminal. And I do think that Kendrick Lamar got a message across that if it were in your face, it would have been chalked up as DEI bullshit, and that would have been it. This was
Yeah.
much more powerful. Now, like you, I have certain forms of music and so forth that get me where I live. But I saw that even more. I saw the concepts that he was going for. You know, the flag with made up of the black guys was a reference to how the country was built on the backs of black people. You
Right.
know, but not everybody got that. And quite frankly, there's a segment of people who watch football, white guys, um, even though some of the major stars in football, certainly by every sport, are black, and their favorite players and stuff, they're still racist. But at this point, to be able to see that, I herald that halftime show. And I do think people will remember some of the images, and it probably hit some people right. But it was time for it. That's what I think. And we
Yeah.
have to reclaim some images and so forth. Yeah, they've got these guys out there, these surrogates that young people, especially young guys, are tuning into. Charlie Kirk and Joe Rogan, and there's others. This spewing their right wing bullshit all the time, and it's appealing to be part of the winning group. And they don't see Democrats as the winning group right now, and they see them cozying up to what they consider to be the losers. The women and the minorities. So we got to get those guys back, and I'm not sure how we do that by having a bunch of old people like Pelosi and Schumer and others leading the pack. I don't think that's wise.
No,
I will have no impact on young people. Most of the people who look at my TikTok stuff are my age or older. I
yeah.
mean, I've got a few young converts, but most of them I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, true. Well, we're coming to the end here, but there's one question I have to ask you, given your background in the arts and acting and that sort of thing. The idea of Donald Trump firing all the people from the Kennedy Center and taking over as chairman. I got to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I think I can pretty much give you. You're going to see the song stylings of Laura Trump. You'll see Kevin Sorbo's Hamlet. You'll see the wit and wisdom of Ted Cruz. You're going to see all that kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
And who's the Motor City Madman? He'll probably be having an opera.
Yeah.
The Ted What's His Face Opera Company,
Ted
that
Nugent.
Ted Nugent Opera Company, and that sort of thing. That's the kind of stuff that it won't be woke, as he puts. I want some Republican somewhere to define that word for me.
Yeah, they can't. There's a
They
lot of rich
can't.
people. There's got to be a lot of rich people with tied to that Kennedy Center that are absolutely pissed,
Oh, I would
Republican
hope
and or
so.
Democrat.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Medal of Freedom. He gave one to, he handed them out like chicklets to just a totally objectionable people and totally denigrated the medal by giving it to Rush Limbaugh and this one and that and that Adelson widow who gives money to right wing candidates and so forth. But um, I've lost my train of thought on it. I just I really think that you'll see
Or were
it.
you particularly upset about by that though when you heard it because of your background in
Yeah.
the arts? Okay.
Yeah, I mean that has to be independent. I mean, I remember you remember Truman, who was a Democrat. His daughter um, had aspirations to to be a performer, and she performed in Washington and got a bad review, and he wanted to have horsewhip the reviewer and so forth. So you better be good if you're going to be promoted by a president, but and if you're a family member, right? But I. The woke thing though, it just really bothers me that the media never questions them define woke. I mean, why
Yeah.
didn't the reporter say, "Can you define woke, Mr. President?" And he couldn't. But
No, he
that's the
can't.
point. Just ask them. Ask the question. Just ask the question. I am offended any time that they meddle in anything to do with art because they don't understand it. Republicans in general, or conservatives, I should say, in general, broader than just Republicans, don't understand art. If it's not, they don't have the mindset for it. If it's not in your face, didactic, they don't get it. And if they think it is in any way critical of them or something they believe in, they are even more upset by
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap things up. Let people know where they can find you because no doubt if they haven't found you already, they better fucking get on it.
Well, I see people, every now and then now that I'm getting, I listen to you on Rational Boomer, which, hi, folks, thanks for that. You can find me at Holler Troll, HOLLERTROLL, on both YouTube and particularly on TikTok.
Yeah. Assuming TikTok's going to be here in a couple months. I don't know what's
Yeah,
going to go on with it.
if not, I keep getting requests from people from something called Lemon something. Do I know anything about that?
Lemon 8 is basically
Yeah,
an offshoot of TikTok. And when they shut it down last time,
yeah,
Lemonade got shut down too. I wouldn't waste my time with Lemonade. Check Substack. I told you that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a
I've
better fit for you.
All righty, we'll go that way. I just wondered, I'm seeing that, and since I'm not on it, I thought, should I get on it and, let them hear it there or whatever. But we'll see what happens with TikTok, and we'll go from there. I'm probably going to stick with YouTube and Substack, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ed, thank you very much. I know people were excited to hear you coming back. For those listening, thank you for taking the time. If you, hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.